We are live now, sir. Let's start.
A very good afternoon to one and all. A warm welcome to everybody. Respected Honorable Vice-Chancellor of SNDT University, Professor Shashikala Vanjari, our esteemed guest speakers, Dr. Mridula Ramanna and Dr. Judy Andrews, our principal, Dr. Asha Menon, the director of the college, Dr. Kumudhavali, our esteemed participants. I, Dr. Madhumita Bandyopadhyay, welcome you all to this national virtual conference on multidimensional perspectives of navigating with COVID-19. This is organized by IQAC of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, Ghatkopar in Mumbai in association with Mukta. We start the program with the concept note. I would now welcome Dr. Shobha Bharat, who is the convener of this national virtual conference, to explain the concept note of this conference. Dr. Shobha Bharat.
Thank you, Madhumita. The coronavirus pandemic has made a huge impact in India and rest of the world. COVID-19 outbreak has presented numerous challenges in every sphere. Generations ahead will look back at this period and study the measures we took to keep going in the face of potential disaster. While it may be safe to say that the catastrophe has been mitigated, how will the disruption of activity for months together shape our immediate future? Join us as we seek answers from the experts across various fields from medical history, education, economy, public health and governance, psychology and sociology. Thank you, Madhumita.
I would now welcome our dear principal, Dr. Asha Menon, to deliver the welcome address. Dr. Asha Menon.
Madam, audio.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I consider it a great honor to welcome Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Shashikala Vanjari Madam, to this national virtual conference titled Multidimensional Perspectives of Navigating with COVID-19, organized by S.P.N. Doshi Women's College, Ghatkopar. Our Vice-Chancellor is a person of distinct vision and a fountainhead of illuminating ideas and an inspiration to all of us. Under her leadership and guidance, the university has scaled greater heights. Welcome, Madam, to this program. Srimati Meena Ben Khetani, our Managing Trustee, SPRJ Kanyashala Trust, is not here with us as there is a medical emergency in her family, but her support and guidance is always there for our endeavors. I would also like to welcome Dr. S. Kumudhavali Madam, Director, who is a source of inspiration to all of us. I would like to welcome the eminent speakers for today, Dr. Mridula Ramanna Madam, Dr. Judy Andrews Grace Madam, who has accepted our invitation to be here with us and speak on important relevant topics. I would like to welcome all the dear participants for this virtual conference. I am told we have more than 370 participants from 15 states of India, and there are people participating from Canada and California too. You all have made this conference a great success by your participation. But before I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Shobha Bharat, I would like to mention a few accomplishments of my college. We have been recognized as one of the top performing institutes in the country by NAC in 2017. Our college was accredited thrice with A grade by NAC in 2003, 2010, and 2016. We at S.P.N. Doshi, while basking in the glory of our success, do not sit on our achieved laurels, but tirelessly work to touch the zenith. At the same time, we wish to correct the shortcomings of the past and try to fare better in the future. Today, we look forward with a sense of hope towards greater growth and progress. Each year, we have accomplished important milestones, creating a niche for ourselves. The vision of our institution is to educate, enlighten, and empower girls. We insist to motivate the weak, address the average, and challenge the gifted. Well-qualified and dedicated teachers, excellent teaching learning process, student support like mini lunch, cloth bank, book bank, good governance, leadership and management, and best practices like IQAC and academic and administrative audit have helped us achieve what we have today. All these have culminated not only in getting high grades in NAC, but also in fulfilling our vision to be recognized as a center of excellence for education that empowers women, leading to self-actualization. I once again welcome each one of you to this national virtual conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Meenakshi to give an introduction about Mukta. Dr. Meenakshi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all. Mukta is Registered Association of Mumbai University and College Teachers. It is formed in 2008. It is initiated by former President Dr. Shekhar Chandatre and General Secretary Dr. Namdev Mangi. Now under the leadership of Dr. Vaibhav Naravade as a President and Professor Subhash Atavale as General Secretary, Mukta is stepping the new stones. The teacher education cell as well as teachers grievance cell of Mukta are actively functioning to provide support and information to teachers. A new website is also launched which will provide the information to teachers. The team Mukta is active not only in helping and supporting the teachers but also in educating and training them. Hence, Mukta has initiated to conduct the seminars since the first lockdown. 13 webinars are conducted on innovative topics and we received great response from more than 2,000 teachers representing more than 100 universities of India and abroad. Within few days, the technology is developed by the Mukta team and to bring all the teachers all over the world at the one platform to educate them and to train them, we are providing the technical support. Now, Mukta team is helping other institutions and universities by providing the technical support to conduct the webinars and FDPs. As an outcome, 18 such webinars and FDPs are jointly conducted by Mukta. Further, few more programs will be are organized, will be informed to you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Please take over the charge of the session.
Thank you, Meenakshi, ma'am. We are very fortunate today that our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Vanjari, has joined us. And I would now invite Dr. Shobha Bharat to introduce our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Shashikala Vanjari. Dr. Shobha Bharat.
Madam, please unmute your mic.
Dr. Shobha Bharat, would you please unmute yourself? Dr. Shobha.
Thank you, Madhumita. I'm really privileged to introduce the Vice Chancellor of SNDT Women's University, who also has been given the title of Honorary Colonel on July 18th. She is a thorough academician with 2 master's degrees, one in biochemistry and the other English literature. She has completed her PhD in education. She also has guided 15 PhD students to complete their doctorates and 3 are continuing to work under her guidance. She has a total experience of 30 years, 14 years at the graduate level, undergrad level, and 16 years at the master's level. Her outstanding achievement is she has received the Fellowship Award of Commonwealth Council of Educational Administration and Management, and she has received numerous awards. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today for the inaugural session of our national webinar.
Thank you, madam. Hello. Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Please, would you please give your introductory note?
Yes. Very good afternoon to one and all. Respected Dr. Asha Menon, she is the principal. Dr. Subhash Atavale, our honorable member, Dr. Suvarna Raval, Meenakshi Madam, our former and Deputy Director, Dr. Kumudavali, all esteemed speaker. I got to know Mrudula Ramanna Madam is there, Dr. Andrew, Professor Vibhuti Patel. Professor Vibhuti Patel was our professor and head in economics department. So I'm glad to see you all. Now at the beginning, I would like to congratulate Mukta as well as SPN Doshi Women's College. Friends, especially I congratulate Dr. Asha Menon Madam, because under her leadership, this college will get many more things, many more feathers in their cap. You have chosen such a wonderful title for this conference. I know that, and because of limitations, I won't be able to make a few points elaborately before you. Now, this conference is framed as multidimensional perspective of navigating with COVID-19. Friends, the entire world is witnessing the unprecedented difficulty owing to outbreak of COVID-19. Now, as your title of this conference indicates that multidimensional perspective to navigate this Mahamari or COVID-19. Absolutely right, because we know that there are numerous challenges, but how could we do to overcome this situation? That is the one of the challenges, and it's the biggest challenge for all of us. I know that, and already you have introduced me as educationist. I am since long I am in education, and my domain of knowledge is teacher education. Few days back, on 5th of May, most probably in this month only, I read one article, and it was written by Dr. Bhavani Shankar Naik. He belongs to Coventry University, UK. And what he wrote that this online teaching and learning, how it is dangerous to the community of teacher. The title of his article is Zooming the Death of Teachers and Teaching as a Profession. Now think on it very seriously, because n number of perspectives are there to navigate the COVID-19. Now, out of these n number of perspectives, what I feel that there is a big challenge for our community, and coincidentally, Mukta is the collaborative partner of this conference who deals with the capacity building of teachers. Their work is on or in the context of teachers and teachers capacity building. So definitely out of n number of perspectives, this perspective which I would like to focus, and that is related to online shift. We are shifting towards online teaching. Now, when we go back to this article, which was written by what he wrote in that article, because of this shift from conventional classroom to online class, what it hampers or what it is going to impact the entire community of teaching or teachers and students. He wrote there, it will destroy the organic space between teacher and taught. Now, friends, please think on this particular issue or particular dimension. It is very dangerous. You know that whatever efforts you have taken for organizing this such a wonderful conference, how many of them are actively participated or not? This is a question for us. For the sake of certificate, some of them will join this conference, but what is the ultimate gain of this conference? We have to think. When we shift from conventional or traditional class to this online class, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of this particular online teaching? Because Nayak said that it will destroy the culture. It will destroy the spirit of teaching. It will destroy the profession. So it would be a very dangerous things which are coming out day-to-day in teaching domain. So we should be very cautious about this online program, because this is also included in the challenges. And to overcome these challenges, already you have focused in your title to navigate. Now, navigation is very important. So you rather thinking about you think of what I would request you through this conference, through this platform, you discuss what are the issues, what are the challenges, but what are the possibilities through which we definitely convert that, we could definitely convert that challenges into opportunities. Then and then I would say that there will be an outcome of this conference. Friends, there are n number of challenges, and definitely we are having human brain. So people are talking that this is industry 4.0 revolution, this is according to fourth wave or education 4.0. You keep it aside, but immediately what we are facing, and to navigate COVID-19, the immediate plan we should have, and it should be related to our admissions, it should be related to our dropouts, it should be related to our academic structure of the university or college, whosoever and whatsoever. Whosoever means related to the faculty. You think about the faculty members. Are they serious about online teaching? Are they doing some good work or good things in relation to their competence? And then definitely you could see the picture. You can imagine what would be the scenario after 2 or 3 months. Are they ready to take admission in our colleges? And how would be able to navigate that problem? Then if suppose they get admission in our good colleges or B grade colleges, are we enough? Are we adequate to provide them good infrastructure? There are n number of things and there are n number of perspectives. But through the academia, through the experts and through the eminent speakers speak, you think over that, because this is the platform through which we can think to overcome the situation. Then and then we could say that yes, through this conference ultimately we are accomplishing our goals. Otherwise it will be a conference for the sake of certificate, nothing else. But I hope from Dr. Athole and Dr. Menon, both of you and your organization would do something in the context of this navigation of COVID-19. I am very much thankful to you, and I hereby, I can say that I am highly delighted to inaugurate this conference on such a nice and needful topic, multidimensional perspective of navigating COVID-19. So for that, for being invited, I am very much thankful to Dr. Asha Menon and Dr. Subhash Athole. Thank you very much, and I am very much hopeful to get something new, something fruitful from this conference. Thank you. Have a good day and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This was a wonderful introductory note. You have set the right tone for the conference. You have raised apprehensions regarding the Zooming of these conferences. Definitely, it is something to ponder about, and this is what we will try to do through this conference. Now, before we go on to the speakers, I would like to make 2 announcements. One, if you have any questions, please post them in the Telegram group. Again, I repeat, if you have any questions for the speakers, please post them in the Telegram group. We will take them at the end of the session. Second announcement is that you will be given a feedback form, which will again be shared in the Telegram group. Please fill in the feedback form for all the 3 days. It is only when you fill up the feedback form, you will get your certificates. Thank you. Now we go on to our sessions. And the first session will be conducted by Dr. Mridula Ramanna. We are very fortunate today to have the eminent medical historian, Dr. Mridula Ramanna. Dr. Mridula Ramanna was the former HOD of history of SIES College of Mumbai. She has 34 years of teaching experience in both undergraduate and postgraduate sections. And what is important is she is a thorough researcher. I remember her when I used to go to the archives in the 1996, 97, even beyond that. I have always seen her working meticulously, painstakingly in the archive. So she has spent hours and hours in the archives, looking into sources and then writing a number of books and articles. I would like to share with you what her achievements are. She has authored 3 books: Healthcare in Bombay Presidency 1896 to 1930, which was in 2012. Then she has authored Western Medicine and Public Health in Colonial Bombay. This was in 2002, and she has also authored another book, Edward Moore. And her next book is forthcoming very soon. She'll be out with another book, that is Facets of Public Health in Early 20th Century. She has contributed several chapters to edited volumes which have been published by renowned publishers like Routledge, Oxford, etc. She has published articles in different peer-reviewed journals like the Journal of Royal Society of Medicine, Indian Historical Review, Economic and Political Weekly, Social Scientist, etc. There are many more. She has presented papers in several international and national conferences which have been held all over the world, like Sri Lanka, Australia, Cambridge in UK, Toronto in Canada, Cape Town in South Africa, and many more places. She has been invited as a guest speaker by prestigious universities all over the world, like, for example, the Yale University, the University of Illinois at Chicago, the Syracuse University at New York, and many, many more. She has delivered the 25th M.A. Ansari Memorial Lecture at Jamia Millia Islamia. We are really very fortunate to have Dr. Mridula Ramanna with us for the national conference. She would be delivering a lecture on a historical perspective, the Bombay experience in the plague of 1896 and the influenza pandemic of 1918. I now humbly request Dr. Mridula Ramanna to deliver her talk. Dr. Mridula Ramanna.
Thank you, Madhumita. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for inviting me, Madhumita, and thank you, Mr. Athavale, Dr. Athavale, for giving me lesson in PowerPoint. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, Madhumita gave me a formidable task because she wanted me to explore the Bombay experience, both in the plague of 1896 and the influenza pandemic of 1918. During my presentation, you will see certain similarities to the situation today. I will not particularly point them out, but I'm sure you can draw your inferences. I begin with the Bombay plague of 1896. As you can see, sorry.
That cup symbol, madam.
Yeah, cup. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. As you can see, there is a figure of this gentleman, Dr. Acacio Vegas. He was the one who identified the Bombay plague, the bubonic plague, on 26 September 1896. Now, when the plague broke out, the authorities, by authorities I mean the colonial government, they knew nothing about where it came from, how to control its spread. In fact, there was panic. And initially, the policy was, it is said, compassionate, prudent, even sympathetic, so as not to cause affliction and panic. And what did they do? They lit street fires, they opened the roofs of houses, they inspected drains, and they marked houses where plague deaths had occurred with the letters UHH, unfit for human habitation. Then they poured permanganate of potash, phenyl, lime chloride, carbolic powders. They did fumigation in streets and houses. They poured carbolic acid down the drains. Then they took out the drains and steeped them in hot water. In some cases, they even burnt down houses. Now, as you can see, this policy was confused initially. And what was it was interventionist, and this interventionism has been referred to as draconian because they didn't know what to do. So they disinfected, inspected patients, segregated them for the healthy ones from the plague patients for 10 days. Now, the way in which they carried out these were culture and gender insensitive, because bubonic plague, if you are aware, you know, it manifests itself in the form of buboes, which appear below the armpits. So they examined armpits, and the examination of the armpits of women was particularly insensitive. Apart from that, the colonial authorities went into houses, you know, took out things from the houses, threw them in the streets, and there was naturally a policy of resistance. Now, the resistance, the people, the Indians, I'm talking only of Bombay city where plague first appeared, they didn't know what to do either. Not only did the colonial authority not know what to do, but the people, the public didn't know what to do. They too, you know, resorted to all kinds of rumors. For example, they were told that if you kept drinking water in a blue glass bottle in the sunlight for a week, plague would go away. There were others who coped by resorting to plague healers. There was one lady who is supposed to have been possessed by Kali and who attacked the buboes. Then, of course, the police arrested her for endangering public health. There were also recommendations of cow's urine. And then there was, of course, fatalism, which I have pointed out. That is, plague is a natural phenomenon. This was the feeling among the people. Like the eclipse, it would run its course. Maybe the solution is to pray, and that's it. But as you can see on my PowerPoint, there were also rumors. Many rumors, one of which was that Queen Victoria was behind this plague, and therefore her statue was defaced. Now, the anti-plague measures which the government resorted to under the leadership of a general, he was called General Gatacre, and this man actually stopped the fires. And then he began to implement these policies like disinfection, inspection, segregation, and finally hospitalization. Now, as many of you are aware, Kasturba Hospital has been in the news. This is the predecessor to Kasturba, Arthur Road Infectious Diseases Hospital, which was set up in 1892. And in the next slide, I will show you the picture of this man who presided over the hospital for 22 years. Now, in addition to, now, this man is called Choksi, and I will refer to what he has left by way of a record of how he had to deal with plague patients. But before coming to that, I would like to share with you how people reacted to house searches. House searches created a terror among the people. In fact, the search parties could not conceal where they were going, and all kinds of ruses were adopted. For example, they would hide the sick under mattresses. They would put the sick and the dead together behind locked doors, even tie up corpses and place them in the sitting position near the cooking places as if they were preparing meals. So when the inspection parties came into these houses, the people were very unsupportive, uncooperative. They did not come forward with information about the sick unless the patient was delirious and unmanageable. The medical attendant would also not report because he was afraid of losing his practice. The neighbors would not report because they were afraid they would be troubled by social boycott and so on. Now, the method of the implementation of these measures was what was offensive to the people. And you see, there are very many references in contemporary newspapers protesting this. In fact, there is one statement by the Indian Spectator which said, "We thought our government was our Ma-Baap, that it respected the sanctity of our hearts and homes. It would not interfere with what we hold sacred. But we now know that this government, what this government has become. Where is your boasted British law? Where is your freedom? Where is the sanctity of the home?" This is just one example of the newspapers who were very vocal in their expression. There was another paper called the Gujarati which said, "The plague is because of the carelessness of the health and engineering departments of Bombay City, and also the greed of landlords, the extreme irreligiousness that had taken over the city, and the sins of the rulers of the land," that is, the sins of the British. The result of the plague broke out in September. By October, 20,000 people had fled the city. And by December, mortality had reached alarming proportions. And by the following February, Bombay City had halved in the terms of population. Anyway, this caretaker tried to explain what he was trying to do by holding a public meeting. This was held at Anjuman-e-Islam under the presidency of Badruddin Tayyabji. He explained the aims and objectives, yet there was resistance. In 1898, the house searches were abandoned and they replaced it with volunteer committees. Caretaker, I will not refer to Pune and Rand and their well-known events, and it's beyond the scope of this paper. I'm just concentrating on Bombay City. Caretaker was in contrast to Rand. He seems to have tried to at least reach out to the people. Now, the other measure that they adopted is hospitalization. And as I mentioned to you, Choksi is one of the heroes of the Bombay plague. And later he was also in charge of the hospital when the influenza pandemic broke out. He describes how many difficulties he had when patients were brought to the hospital in the last stages. And the means which were used to resuscitate and support the patients was through subcutaneous injections. The people thought that these injections were deliberately given so that the patients would be killed and their hearts would be taken out and sent to the Queen in England, because her statue had been disfigured at the beginning of the plague. I think here she is. Her statue is disfigured. And here is the plaque dedicated to Dr. Vegas. Choksi also records that it was very difficult for him to get any kind of nursing. They were so, people would not come to be nurses. In fact, nursing was in its almost, primitive stages as far as the city went, it was just beginning. The nursing, in fact, was done by the All Saints sisters who came from England, and that's it. But he says that the hospital was so short-staffed and people were not willing to take jobs inside a hospital. In fact, a few of them who did take would run away within hours or days coming to collect their salaries. And Choksi hoped that relatives and friends who came to leave the plague patients would stay back. No, they would leave the patient at the door of at the gate of the hospital and disappear. Choksi also records that there were a number of pseudo specialists. They pretended to know all about plague. And he says for a time, they forgot their regular avocations as tram conductors, railway guards, engineers, postal inspectors, clerks, and they would all talk about various remedies for plague. Finally, the hostility was so strong that in October of 1896, 800 to 1,000 mill hands broke open the gates of this hospital, scaled the walls because they wanted to wreak vengeance on the staff. Some of them even reached the wards. They injured the patients, but no one was hurt. Then they were dispersed by the police, who continued to be stationed on the premises. Choksi, in fact, said that it was the compulsions which people resisted. Sorry. Now, coping with the epidemic, one of the measures that they resorted to were the caste and community hospitals, because they found that if you had doctors of a particular caste or community, that caste and community would avail of the hospital. So I have just listed 29 of them were set up. They were, of course, closed after the plague. One of them was the Parsi Fever Hospital, the Patare Prabhu Hospital, Jain Hospital. There are many more, and I have mentioned 3 women physicians who worked during the plague. Annie Walk actually succumbed to the plague. She died in the plague. Just out of interest, I thought, this is the portrait of Bahadurji, who also died during the plague. In fact, you know, we read about many of our frontline workers in the COVID. Many of them, even in the plague, succumbed. Frontline workers, doctors succumbed to the plague. This is a picture of a temporary plague hospital, which was set up in Bombay. There are also pictures of cremations done during the plague and so on. This is on the website of the Wellcome Trust Library in London. Now, I have selected this particular journal called the Hindi Punch, Anglo-Gujarati. It has many cartoons. It was a satirical journal, and they have these few references which I'm pointing out. Plague was called the bubonic Mahatma, which had troubled Bombay the Beautiful. Hindi Punch lauded the efforts of Indian doctors. I mentioned Dr. Vegas. There was also Ismail Jan Mohammed, who identified cases of pneumonic plague. N.F. Surveyor, who was the assistant to Haskin, and Dr. Blaney. He was actually an Irishman. He was a very popular private practitioner. So Hindi Punch lauded the efforts of these doctors during the plague. Hindi Punch also had this very interesting quotation, which I have put at the end of this slide, expressing the people's capitulation. We have whitewashed, finailed, fumigated, condemned, altered, burnt, destroyed. We turned on the water, turned it off, all to no purpose. Hindi Punch is telling us also that the next slide will show you Bombay the Beautiful, darkened by the shadow of disease and death. You see, she's really a beautiful woman, and she has been, and here is another, Mumbai in distress. She is really been attacked by the plague. And other, Hindi Punch actually has cartoons on all diseases. You have also on malaria and so on. Hindi Punch attacked the health department for not predicting the onset of plagues and and therefore you have a cartoon of the health officer surrounded by rats. Hindi Punch records that when the plague controls were imposed, people fled the city. Everybody fled. Godawala, Dhobi, corn grinder, barbers, massage, and so on. Hindi Punch pointed out that while parlor physicians deserted, native hakims stayed on in the city and tried to provide relief. Hindi Punch attacked the Bombay Plague Committee for the municipal expense, 33.5 lakh of rupees on the plague. Now, there was a search for answers, and the man of plague prophylactic or the plague vaccine was Haskin. He developed it in a little room in the Grant Medical College, and on 10th January 1897, his supporter and colleague N.F. Surveyor injected him with the vaccine, and he had a dosage which was 4 times stronger than what was later accepted as standard. Surveyor was the one who isolated the plague bacillus from the patient of Vegas. There is also the discovery by Yersin of the plague bacillus. Choksi himself pioneered clinical trials of loose stick serum, on which I have written a paper, which was published in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine. Now, what they did was, it was not easy to promote it, this prophylactic. The first trial was at the Baikala House of Correction, that is the jail. But gradually, you find that because of the support of this is Haskin Institute, which is named after Haskin, the laboratory moved here, and it was abandoned because of the wife of the governor getting cholera there in 1883. But later, this is where the Haskin Institute moved. It was called Haskin Institute after Haskin much later. First, it was called the Bombay Bacteriological Laboratory. And this institute was used as a hospital for plague patients during the plague epidemic. Now, here is a picture of the plague prophylactic being administered. Now, the plague policy changed in the 20th century. The British realized, especially after the assassination of Rand and all this opposition to the interventionism, they changed the plague policy and they promoted the prophylactic with what they call the people's support. you had doctors, you had civic leaders, you had political leaders like Gokhale, Tilak, Devdar in Pune, and many others, and you had Tayyabji, the Khojas, different Aga Khan, different leaders of the city coming forward to take the prophylactic. So they promoted the prophylactic. It was gradual. The British thought that because the Indians had more or less accepted, especially Bombay, had accepted smallpox vaccination, they would accept the plague prophylactic too. The other thing that they resorted to was rat extermination, because by the Plague Research Commission's conclusion, it was found that bubonic plague spread through the infected rat fleas. So rat extermination, it was carried out by the municipality, and then they created the City Improvement Trust to open up, those closed houses and build better houses. Now, fine, it's already, I have some 20 minutes at least, Madhumita.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Please carry on.
Okay. Now, the other response to the plague was something which has been brought into effect today, and that is the Epidemic Diseases Act, 1897, the same act. Now, this was done, actually, the Indian press believed that the health department had paid no heed to the gravity of the epidemic. It was only when other European nations began to take stringent measures against the British government here in India that they introduced the Epidemic Diseases Act. It was regarded at that time as being vague, harsh, and very arbitrary, because the main thing was they wanted to control travel. Now, internal travel. For internal travel, they carried out railway medical inspection. As early as October of 1896, they introduced it both at Kalyan and at Kurla, outside, it was supposedly outside Bombay. And then they had disinfection of the railways and people who would be detained, something like what you call quarantine. There were detention camps, and they had to have some kind of certificate to enter the city. And they had to be inspected at different intervals, and for a period of 10 days. You can see there's a lot of things which are happening today as well. People who came from other districts of Bombay Presidency, Satara, Pune, Konkan, Kutch, Mandvi, Karachi, they were all detained, inspected, and so on. And later, the Indian Plague Commission claimed that because of this measure of medical inspection, we were able to prevent the outbreak from spreading. The other thing that they did was, it was called the system of surveillance. Persons coming from infected areas were, inspected, surveyed, the surveillance, and conveyances, whatever they came by, railways, etc., were disinfected. And of course, there were many objections because there were discrimination. Europeans were treated differently than Indians in the medical inspection and so on. They also imposed quarantine. The other powers imposed quarantine against Bombay. So the Epidemic Diseases Act precluded the delivery of port clearance to any vessel without the production of the Port Health Officer's bill. So every person who went by ship had to undergo a medical examination before he embarked on the ship. And apart from that, every contaminated article was disinfected. Clothing and bedding of the crew was exposed to the sun, and all the holds of ships were clean, lime washed, or disinfected. The Plague Commission claimed that because of these measures, no case of plague had broken out or they were able to control it. Now, I think, a little more time because I'm going to move on to the influenza pandemic. Now, after the colonial policy was opposed during the plague, the British became very ad hoc. They were chastened. And so when the outbreak occurred in Bombay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. We can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, we have very heavy rains here. It's raining like crazy outside. Anyway, I'm in Bangalore, by the way. The influenza pandemic broke out in Bombay in June of 1918. Again, they did not know where it came from. But there is a difference. When cholera and plague broke out, they blamed India. India is the home of diseases. Indian sanitary habits are what cause diseases and so on. But influenza came from the West. It had already broken out in the West, in America, and then it spread to Europe. So they could not blame India. Besides that, it was a viral disease. The causative agent, it was impossible to detect it at that time, even under a microscope. In fact, medical research in India since the 1890s was in parasitology and bacteriology, where they could easily identify the enemy, like malaria, for example, cholera. But not with this influenza. They didn't know what to do. It first came to Bombay when 7 police sepoys, one of whom worked in the docks, was admitted to hospital with a fever. The medical officer at that time, the health officer, was a man called Turner. He traced the day-to-day progress and he noticed that there were many workers in shipping firms, Dockyard, Bombay Port Trust, HSBC, Telegraph, Mint, Rachel Sassoon Mills. They were all affected and mortality was suddenly increasing. Mass absenteeism was also noted. Now, very interestingly, the press was very vigilant. Bombay Chronicle said that the city and the whole of India has paid for the neglect by the health authorities, and this disease has come to haunt us. Lakhs of rupees have been spent, but they are not able to anticipate this disease, and so on. Turner himself said that this came like a thief at night. Its onset was rapid and insidious. From Bombay, the epidemic spread to other parts.
Ma'am, you're inaudible. Ma'am, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I think there's a power problem there and her internet is also not proper.
Okay. So, should I call her and find out, sir?
Just find out. I think electricity went off there.
Okay, I'll find out.
Just check it.
Ma'am, what happened? There is some problem with the power? Okay, because you're lost. We are not now. There seems to be a problem.
Any problem with the electricity there, or?
Yes, there is a problem there. It's raining very, very heavily, and therefore
Yeah.
maybe she is not able to connect. There's some problem with her net also. So maybe we go on to the next program. She said that you can start with the next, and as soon as her things are settled there, she'll come back and conclude the lecture.
Okay, but the problem is now she has not stopped her screen.
Screen sharing.
Yeah, screen sharing. So just check it out, Andrews madam, whether you can share or not.
1800 per month. Annually, only 1800.
So should I call her and ask?
That, one subscription I can share 100 IDs also, right?
Andrews madam, please unmute yourself and.
Oh, so I'll have to pay accordingly.
Yes, sir. I'm just trying.
Thank you so much. I'll get back.
Yes, it is coming.
yes,
so I
we
think
can.
okay.
Yeah,
we can run through her presentation.
Okay.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
But before we start with the lecture by Dr. Andrews, Dr. Judy Andrews, I would like to invite Shobha Bharat to give an introduction of Dr. Judy Andrews. Dr. Shobha Bharat.
Thank you, Madhumita. Dr. Judy Grace Andrews is a MA, MEd and PhD with also a postgraduate diploma in counseling. She is presently the associate professor.
Hello,
and
ma'am.
head.
Hello.
Am I audible?
We would invite Dr. Judy Andrews for delivering her talk.
Shall I start with the introduction before that?
Yes, Shobha, please.
Dr. Judy Grace Andrews has done her post-graduation in MA and MEd, also a PhD and a postgraduate diploma in counseling. She is presently the associate professor and HOD of Research Cell at the Gandhi Shikshan Bhavan's Srimati Surabja College of Education, Mumbai. She has over 34 years of experience in the field of education. She has been the president of Mumbai Autonomous Board for Early Childhood Education. She is also a PhD research guide. She has been the convener and member of syllabus revision committees at both Mumbai University and SNDT University. Thank you so much, ma'am, for gracing and agreeing to be the resource person. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for my introduction. Honorable Vice-Chancellor, SNDT University, management members, Principal of Srimati P.N. Joshi Women's College, office bearers of Mukta. A very good evening to one and all. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the management, principal, faculty members of the college, and the office bearers of Mukta for organizing this 3-day national virtual conference on multidimensional perspectives of navigating with COVID-19. And my very special thanks to Dr. Shobha Bharat for convening it and doing all the endeavors. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
The topic that's been given to me is teachers, students, and online teaching way ahead. Well, the onset of COVID, the sudden blow of the COVID epidemic 19 has set not only disrupted our day-to-day life, but all sectors of society globally. As Honorable Vice-Chancellor in the keynote spoke about the challenges that are there before us, said it's alarming, it's really worrying. Yes, all in a sudden, the entire teaching fraternity has moved into something which was very different from the normal. All of a sudden, we moved into a lockdown mode. It is not just the lockdown. Along with it came a package of anxiety, fear, uncertainty, stress. All this came as a package. Things didn't seem to be ending as we thought. Even now, when we look into it, we do not know when will this end as this situation keeps continuing. With all this that's coming ahead, what is one thing that comes in is whenever mechanism changes, whenever things changes, the automatic thing that comes in our mind is resistance. The automatic thing that we become rigid sometime. Our focus become different. This is very unforeseen. But when we look at what Albert Einstein has said, before that, we look at the students and the teachers. When all these changes came all of a sudden, teachers become very alert. We also, though there was some kind of fear, anxiety, we became resilient and began to move forward. This is a phase, a transitional phase from face-to-face mode to a asynchronous mode, which we need to shift into. The students become a little more flexible and moved along with us. I like to quote Albert Einstein, who said, "In every crisis, there is an opportunity." We look at our teachers, we look at this, or I'm looking at this as an opportunity. If you look at problems as struggles, we'll never be able to go forward. Plagues were there before, and they are now. Pandemic has not stuck for the first time. It was there before in 1918 as well. We heard Dr. Ramna speak about it. So when the changes comes in, what is our response is what we need to look for. The crisis, I think, has given opportunity to education sector to enter, to quickly adopt, reimagine, redefine, rethink, and reboot our curriculum, pedagogy, and delivery of our education system. I'm sure you all will agree that without any qualms, most of us, or I would say all of us, turn to online platforms. Since there was hardly any time for preparation, we just made a transition from one mode to the other without getting much equipped for the same. There was one goal in all our mind, is completion of portion. This was a paramount thing that was in our mind because the pandemic stuck all on a sudden when we were in the middle of a semester. But thanks to the fraternity, they became resilient as the days of lockdown prolonged. And we bounced back to a learning situation. We may have to go a long way in this. Change is the spice of life. Our outlook towards the change makes the difference. When we become resilient and demonstrative in all that we wanted to do, we move towards progress. Stumble and stay, then we may not be able to move towards progress. I want you to go back a few years, think about the changes that had occurred all on a sudden. Thinking through history, 20 years back, when electronics hit, the whole lifestyle has changed. All of us moved in to electronic mode. In 1999, we all would remember that when the IT power hit, there was a lot of changes that was going through. The Y2K came in, but it did not bring any harm. The changes have brought about a lot of good things in every sector, in every field of a nation. In fact, today when we look at the top IT house, people are headed by Indians. The change has come and it has come to be permanent. What I want to remind you is that when a change comes in, it's not come there for a particular time. A change has come for a permanent thing. You look at the changes that happened with regard to our banking system. All of a sudden, all of us moved to a cashless society. We complied. We had initial problems, initial challenges, initial jerks were there, but we bounced back. Today, most of our transactions takes place with our smartphones. So we did move with the change and it has come to stay. Many of us, even when we look at the less privileged people of the society, they have also taken up this change and moved on when it comes to finance, when it comes to banking things, or when it comes to even marketing, buying things. So these changes come and the changes have come to stay. So change is irrevocable. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. There are certain things that we need to keep in mind when we are ahead. there's a difference between online. When we move online, there's a difference between online lecture and online teaching. Taking a lecture online is certainly different from teaching online. These two things are different. When we move towards a transition, when we move towards a change, we may have to take care of few things to make an effective teaching learning process. We need to make a lot of adaptation as teachers. Even when things comes back normalcy, I believe we may have to follow on the line of teaching methodology the same way for a longer time. There are 5 points that we can adapt or adopt for an effective online teaching learning. Dr. Bharat Bhaskar, Director IIM Raipur, has shared these 5 points for all the faculty who would be moving on to teach effectively online. The first thing is that we need to remember technology cannot replace every one of us as teachers. Technology cannot replace you. So all that we need to do is we need to be prepared. We need to adapt ourselves to the changing situation. There are different modes for teaching. There are already online platform is in place, like edX, Coursera, which is there. Now these are in asynchronous mode. When things are in asynchronous mode, many a time, not all students, the majority may not be in the phase of learning. Majority may not be wanted to be in this phase to learn. So all we need to do is change our platform to a synchronous mode. Now, when we look at the synchronous mode of teaching, we need also to take a few things in concern. One is we have to look at the platform which we are planning to take. We do use different technology, different platform, maybe Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet. We may use any one of these platforms. But in this, how are we going to carry out the teaching learning? As I said, majority may not like to be in the asynchronous mode. So when they come to synchronous mode, they need the same kind of touch. Probably the teachers need to be prodding, correcting constantly to improve. For all this, we need to know the technology well. The second element in this, when we have to look into, is build familiarity in class. Let the children know the technology. Let the students know the technology. Let the teachers knowledge. To change, it takes time for us to understand and to move on. Let's remember the time when we had to shift from the use of overhead projector to our PowerPoint presentation. We had to get all the familiarity when we moved from one to the other. When it is familiar for all, it is easy to have the class interesting, engaging. We can use certain things like chat channel in which we can keep engaging the students, because some of the problems that we would see is how am I going to get connect with the students as I connect it face to face? Can I make that same change coming in my students? So we can try and do this through the side channels that we have. We need to build certain norms with them to make the class interesting and engaging. So the element of unfamiliarity should be removed. The engagement should be keeping on through this chat channels that we have. And the norm should be in place for us to be effectively able to carry out the class. The second thing he says is, engage the students. Now, engage the students, it's not that you might wonder, when I can't so many of them in front of me, 80 students, 90 students. This is where we need to look into effective methodologies, which we will be talking a little later. So when we want to engage the students, let's know that in the traditional situation, probably we will take time to introduce the topic. We take some time to get familiar with the students and then move on. When it comes to online, we have to be brief and quick by using all the tool technology. We need to see that all the time our students are engaged, and that too in a proactive manner. By using different tools, like, for example, if you're teaching in a class, if you want to know whether students have understood a few points, use polls immediately. So we would come to do it through a poll question. We'll come to know how many of them are engaged. Use a chat channel online forum where you can give a feedback or put in a question for them to ask. So our task is definitely multitasking. But nevertheless, it is not going to be difficult. There's another way that we could engage is using a lot of gamification, which is part of the learning process as well. Engage beyond classroom through other means of LMS. After the class, we can continue with the chat room. We can continue with them through other modes of social media. So this is something which is going to be vital if we have to continue online teaching modes. It is not just going to be there for about half an hour or 40 minutes or 1 hour that we just talk to them and that's the end of it. No. If we need to make the class interesting, this have to go beyond the class as well. We can have a lot of feedback mechanism through which we can keep the children engaged throughout. So engaging the students is a very vital thing that one has to think when we may prepare for an online classroom. This is with connected to teachers that we are seeing. The next thing that we need to see is designing a course. We do talk about, we do make this even in our face-to-face classroom. We make our course preparation and all that. But here it's a little more in depth we need to go. We need to put a complete course outline, a weekly or module wise, well in advance for the students. The learner's perspective is very different over here when it comes to online. The learner wants to know why, how, when, where, that he would use this material and how he can use it, why you should use it. All this question comes to him. So in order to make him understand that the lesson that we are teaching at a particular time is going to be useful for him as a learner in his later perspective. So the complete course outline has to be made and presented for them. The second thing is the learning outcome in terms of ask, that is application, skill, and knowledge to be in place. If I'm going to teach about micro skills, how am I going to apply? How am I going to, what knowledge should I gain from this? So this is learning outcome has to be in place, and we have to prepare and put them for the students. It's not that just it is in the syllabus, but we need to give it to them every time as a part of their content course that we are giving them. Now, coming to reference material and reading materials. Normally, we make a big laundry list and just give it to them. These are the things that you need to read and come before we come for class. But that's not going to happen now here in online. We can't just give just the information, that's the references. We need to curate the content. The content has to be very much to the point for the children, what they learn. So curated content, what we need to prepare and give them as a reading material. So this is again comes as a challenge. Just like when we were beginners into teaching for job, we began to prepare our things in the way that we need to. We worked hard towards preparing materials, we referred, and we did a lot of things. When we became experienced, we just added here and there a few things that we need to do. The same thing is going to be here as well. Preparing a curated content, it's going to be a challenge for every one of us. So that's where we need to think. It is not just going to be an easy platform, but it is going to be an engaging platform for all of us, even the faculty, to be engaged all the time in some way or the other. The next thing that we see is that we can also post in over here. We also give them the questions and the quiz, the entire matter, entire thing has to be given to them through given to them as a material for the reading, for which we use, a lot of us use Google Drive and other such platforms where they can go and read the material, access the content for themselves, read themselves, and get back as well. Now, when we give the content material, it's not only the writing materials, because this generation, if you give them 20 pages to read, they are not going to sit and read that. So looking into the clientele, looking into the people whom we are serving, we need to make this content into an audio form or into a video form. Definitely, that's going to be a challenge for the faculty, for the teachers. But when we make that content into clientele interest, or who they would be able to learn faster, they'll be able to learn better. So this is one thing that we need to remember. This generation is someone who wants to listen. They're auditory learners, visual learners, more than just reading a material. Well, the next thing that we need to see is that keep the class more alive while we are teaching them. Convert reading materials into multimedia content. Let it be learner friendly. Use more of gamification. Democratize the learning. When we wanted to democratize, which means that let the learner know that he has to learn this because it has some value. He has to learn it because it's going to bring some change in his attitude and behavior. The mindset need to change. The behavior and attitude and the mindset does not change. He will not be able to learn. We will see some more areas how we can bring these changes as well in the minds of children, in the minds of the students. So we need to give them that freedom. At the same time, we need to give them a directed freedom for them to choose and to learn. The next thing that we see is the assessment. This also need to be in place before we go in for our online teaching learning process, before we go ahead with it. When we take a content to teach, we need to keep all this in mind before we go to teach. Grading system is changing a lot in this online phases. Yes, we moved from marks to grade thinking. Marking system comes to bring about parity between the better one, the good one, or the one who is unable to cope up. So we brought about grading system, but even this grading system is not much catering to the differences. It's also almost bringing about who is the best. So we need to change the assessment pattern by bringing them a lot of individual educational plan. Application-based assignment is what they're looking for, where you find the restriction of being copied or downloading something and bringing about. These things can be eradicated if we can give application-based assignment. Peer evaluation is another way that we can look into. Well, with coming to content, so this is the teacher preparedness I was talking. Simultaneously, we were looking into how the students are prepared themselves as well. When we prepare, they are also simultaneously getting prepared. So when we now look into the content, how should be our content? In a traditional class, we had the content like this: our content dissemination, content assimilation, and content evaluation. This is what we were focusing on. But now, with the online class, there is something new that is coming in. Now, this comes from our history. When we look at the Nalanda University, which we are proud of long ago, which had 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers, 1:5 ratio. All that they were learning was to create content. Today, we are talking about different learning methods. The students need to be engaged. We talk about learner-centered activities. We talk about students being in actively engaged, active learning process. Experiential learning is what we plan to give for them. But we ask ourselves and say, do they create content? And that's what is going to happen when you look at the online evaluation, because there is no time to teach the entire process. So all that you do is you give the content, the students will do self-learning. Now the question may come to you, how many of them will learn and come to class? Even when during the face-to-face, we gave them content to study and come, they never come to the class with full prepared. How many of them are going to come prepared? This is where we need to place in place certain strategies. We can always put the material and tell them, unless they are given a short test, a short questions, few questions on the content. Now, this is not for them to know whether they have passed or failed, but this is for us to know whether they have learned the content or not learned the content. Keep it open for them to go many a times approaching the content and learn the content. So we can always keep a parameter saying that those of them who have got a B grade or C grade in the test, only then they can join the class. So you might wonder, how can nobody will join the class? They will all have their own time. Learning is not going to be so ever. If the student is interested in learning, if the student has enrolled for the course, if the student want to pursue in a course, the student will automatically look into all the parameters as well. So we can bring in such kind of measures through which we can control the students' disciplines, to control the students' behavior, attitude, and the mindset for learning. So when we look into the online classes, definitely content dissemination is there, but it is not going to be a place where they are going to learn the content over there. Learning is already done outside the classroom. Here, they are going to create, they are going to engage, they are going to bring new knowledge. That's what they're going to do. They learn how to apply the knowledge, and that is where the change, the transmission is coming in. The transition is coming in. Here they know how they can assimilate the application, how they can apply in real situation, and that is what they're going to look in over here. Even the evaluation process, it's not going to be as at the end of a topic or end of a thing. Evaluation is going to be ongoing, because every time they can't enter the class without having read or without completing the assignment with the questions and getting that grade, they're not going to enter into the class. So that helps you. That's an online evaluation going on. All that we want as students is not to fail them, learn a content and fail. No, all we want is that the students will learn the content and move forward. So in the online mode, the student has the freedom to take up the matter, learn the matter, work towards it, and move on. We are all in higher education. In fact, higher education learning should be more of self-learning than one-to-one, and then a teacher-assisted learning. Teacher is just a facilitator over there. So when we look into this, online class is going to be more effective. We put in all this in place. There are a few methods that we can look into. My time has come to close. I will just share a few methods. Case method. Case method is in vogue from 1906, and it's been used by many of the B schools and medical and law areas when they've been using it. But this can also be used in different situations with education as well. In degree colleges also it can be used. In education colleges also it can be used. Now, when we wanted to use case method, we need to keep in mind a few principles. That is, theoretical model is a must for every case method that we do it. So we need to look for a theoretical model, look for a concept and apply the same. We need to look for problem identification. We need to look for problem solving. Now, all this should be in place. So then we can use the case method very effectively. The same goes with the simulation. When we wanted to do simulation, build the foundation for it, debrief, make a flow of the debrief, the whole thing. Then again, it has to go with the three things. That is, it must be based on a theory. Now, all this theory can be learned by the students outside the classroom. So when he gets in, it's not the theory that he's learning. His application of the theory is what he's going to learn. And thus, he is going to create content and not just have learning as a normal way of understanding the things that we have. The last one is flipped classroom. Now, all these methods we've been using, it's not that we are not being using, but when it comes to flipped classroom, it's a little change that we need to, when it comes to the online classroom, a little change that we need to look into it. So flipped classroom is another thing that we can use it effectively, where both we can use asynchronous mode as well as synchronous mode in the classroom. Again, here we look into, our aim is to create content. Okay, it's not just content dissemination that we look into, but we are looking into content creation. all these methods to be in place, for all the content in place, there are a few things that comes are handy is the LMS. Normally, we use this for our record purposes, for other attendance purposes. But here it is learning. So we are going to use it for a learning purposes. For learning management is what we are going to use this for. The challenges that we may look into for all this, when we look in, is orientation. Is orientation of faculty, orientation to student. This is going to be a big challenge for us because our learning has to be, there's a shift for our students from face-to-face learning to more of self-learning. For the faculty, they need to orient themselves to the new patterns, the new ways of preparing the content, delivering the content, and evaluating the content. So in all the process, they become a learner. They become more flexible. Well, I had a short polling with my students, about 100. And the result says that about 80% of them, they felt online learning is better than face-to-face learning. Well, the change has come to be here. The change has come to stay here. All that we need to do is, as Alan Watts says, the only way to make sense change is to plunge into it, to be in it, and to join the dance. So let's plunge in it, let's move with it, and let's make the dance. And let's make learning and teaching an enjoyable forum. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This was a wonderful session. It was a very, very fruitful session. In fact, you have taught us, you have in fact told us how we can actually handle the situation. We as teachers can handle the situation in the next few months, where I'm sure we will not be able to go to college, neither will our students be able to join the college. Thank you so much. Now, we would like to move on to Mridula ma'am's lecture. I request Dr. Mridula Ramanna to continue with her lecture. Dr. Mridula Ramanna, would you please conclude your lecture, ma'am? Dr. Mridula Ramanna. Dr. Mridula Ramanna needs to be unmuted.
Yes, her video also is not visible.
She is visible. Her video is visible. I can see her, but she needs to be unmuted. Dr. Mridula Ramanna. Dr. Mridula Ramanna.
I think she is there on the screen, but her this thing is not there. I couldn't locate her.
Okay.
Visible now, sir. She is visible. Sir, please wait now. She is just.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear.
Yes, madam.
I don't know how long this will go on because we had almost a cloud burst. Very heavy rains. So power is gone and it's just not yet come back. So let me just finish my PowerPoint before it goes again.
Yes, ma'am. Please continue. We are really, this shows the problems of technology. Please continue.
No, not at all. So I was talking about the influenza outbreak in Bombay in June 1918. And I was saying that it was a viral disease. The causative agent was impossible to detect even at that time, even under a microscope. And because medical research in India since the 1890s was in parasitology and bacteriology, where the enemy was easy to identify and respond to. At the time, the Surgeon General, all he could do was prescribe gargling with diluted potassium permanganate, aspirin, warned against the use of quinine, which is now being promoted by Trump as a curative or prophylactic, and recommended immediate medical attention when fever appeared, and finally hospitalization. Sorry. Now, there was a second wave in September 1918, which was very virulent, and it struck the young, though the theory was at the time that it was the young and the very old who would be struck. But this seems to have struck the age group of 20 to 40. And Choksi, whom I referred to earlier, made this comment that in the rapidity of spread and the enormous number of its victims and its total fatality, influenza reached a virulence before which actually plague also, with all its horrors, fades into insignificance. The authorities really didn't know what to do. And in fact, for the second epidemic, they found it difficult to compile statistics because influenza was not among the heads under which mortality was recorded. And most of the reporting agency was ignorant. They could not recognize the disease. Another feature which was noted about the second wave was it was many more women were victims. And also there was an increase in stillbirths. This was noted by scholars who have worked on this. Anyway, in Bombay city, it was a very high mortality. From 219 deaths on 16 September, it increased to 768 on 6th October. Now, when this happened, the authorities, as I said, didn't know what to do. And that is when this John Andrew Turner, health officer, appealed to the public. And what was very remarkable was the response of the public. I have worked on this and I have shown that there were various organizations who came forward, the Hindu Medical Association, the Social Service League, a number of caste and community associations, professional associations. And what they did was they provided medical relief, and they, the Social Service League already had in its agenda the promotion of sanitation and hygiene among its aims. So you had, and it had conducted anti-tuberculosis campaigns. In fact, Bombay City was actually one of the pioneers in anti-tuberculosis campaigns. It provided training in first aid. And very interestingly, the Influenza Relief Committee, which was set up, raised funds from a variety of organizations. The charities like the Vadiyas, the Tatas, the Cotton Brokers Association, the Cotton Merchants and Mukaddams Association, and professional associations. Now, they provided stock mixture, milk, clothing, and they also arranged for the burial or cremation of the dead, because this became a very point of crisis. They also made arrangements for temporary boarding and lodging of patients discharged from hospitals, because the hospitals which were identified by the government were JJ, GT, and the Kasturba Hospital, which I mentioned earlier, Arthur Road Hospital. But for the most part, there were, relief provided by these voluntary initiatives. And you also had nursing provided by St. John's Ambulance Brigade. And like it happened in the previous pandemic, they found that these caste and community hospitals were effective. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there was a lot of public involvement, what today we call the NGOs, the NGO involvement in trying to provide relief to the stricken. Now, what suggestions were made by these associations for what they call the post-influenza wars, more hospitals and dispensaries, and they felt acutely the need for nurses, so training of nurses, the use of hakims and vaids, drastic sanitary measures, better water supply, the closure of schools, colleges, and cinemas in case there was another infection, and pneumonia to
We have again lost ma'am.
Yeah, I think she's again, there's some problem.
Yes, there seems to be a acute
because
problem because of the heavy rain which they are facing.
And her bandwidth is coming to ekdam close only.
Okay. So we go on to the next. I guess by the time she joins, yes, now it doesn't show her. So by the time she joins, should we go to the question answer session?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we can invite Dr. Aarti Verma. Dr. Aarti Verma, would you please read out the questions? At least Judy ma'am can answer those questions. When Ramana ma'am joins, then we can ask her the questions. I'm sure she has many more things to talk about, which would be very interesting. But every time there are, sometimes technology does not support us. So I invite Dr. Aarti Verma to read out the questions which the participants have. Dr. Aarti Verma.
Yes, good evening all, respected dignitaries, principal and most valued prominent speaker, dear participants of various colleges and institutions. Myself, Dr. Aarti Verma, is here to take up question answer session. Now, without taking much of time, I will just move on to the question. These questions are related to session 2. The very first question which I had is, in this pandemic, whole teaching learning has been shifted to online method, but how the kids or young ones staying in remote area, slum, belonging to poor family who cannot afford online technologies, how will they make up this loss during this period? Because this pandemic is going, or it is expected to prolong for many number of days, or it will take time.
Yeah. Well, can I answer?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. Well, this is always when there is some change comes in, we always think about how to overcome it. I know it is very understandable when you look into the marginalized section of the society or the privileged society, I would say they do have a challenge. But I would like to bring to notice, a survey has been done by one of the colleges, Pillai's College of Education in Mumbai.
We lost you. So now they're taking some question answers with the other speaker, Judy. You're back, ma'am. Yes. I know this must be very stressful for you. I understand.
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, which they found out where they said that even the poorest of the poor people, they do have a mobile in which their online teaching and learning is going on. Definitely, it is a big challenge for them to get the, even when I asked my students, about 40% of them said it is a bit costly affair because they have to get the package done and get the things done for the class. Now, since this was a sudden shift, we could not cater to all these needs as well. But in course of time, government can bring about a lot of changes in this. There used to be when children were suffering, not having food, they brought about midday meals. When they're not having books, they brought about giving free books. So similarly, they will be bringing about giving them mobile or any other way of connecting with them. This needs interventions for sure. This cannot be just bypassed. But also I wanted to say, I spoke to some of the municipal school teachers as well. They also, all of them came into, just like we fell into taking up into a mode of teaching, they also moved into online teaching. There are people who are not able to join, but not many, even into the interior parts. One of my students who is staying away, she went away from Mumbai, not able to come, had this challenge. But we took care of the time. There only at specific time the child had the electricity. So we took care of the time, that's a specific time that we could have our classes. So there are challenges, I do agree with you, but we can mitigate it very easily, looking into where the challenges and how we can help through it. I can't hear you, ma'am. Your speaker is muted.
Yeah. Can you clarify the synchronous mode of teaching?
Okay. In synchronous mode of teaching, we take up any platform where we can meet the group, just like this Zoom platform.
Yeah.
In asynchronous mode, we send the documents to them, they read the documents, and that's how we make the connection, where we were not connecting with them in the real time. But whereas in the synchronous mode, we can connect with them in the real time. Like if we take WebEx, if we take Zoom, if we take Google Meet, there are umpteen number of things that's coming in where we can connect with the students directly. But the space that is given, the time that is given is very limited, and we can't go on and on with this kind of platform. So when they enter in, all the students need to learn and then come inside. This is a place for exploring. This is not a place for learning. So learning is always happening in an asynchronous mode outside the classroom. And here when they come in, it's assimilation that is happening. Content creation is what is happening over here. So that is what we look into. So when the teacher is preparing, the teacher has to prepare for group activities. The teacher has to prepare for where they would come out throwing, when she gives a question, how they can answer the question for it. It's not learning, but for example, if I'm going to teach about a learning theory, this is not a place I will be teaching the learning theory. How I could apply the learning theory is where they will learn. So student will participate in this, engage themselves in this, the learning becomes better.
Yes. One more question. This is the last question for session 2. Do you think face-to-face interaction with student and online interaction are equally fruitful?
I would say it would be equally fruitful if we can plan in the manner that we need to plan. Definitely, when we do face-to-face, we are looking at the students' change of behavior and attitude, and accordingly, we change the method of teaching or the mode of communication, keep changing. But when it comes to online, this is not seen very visibly. So we need to be very much well in advance. We have to plan and keep them engaging. If the learner is in an engaging mode, definitely they will be able to learn. In that way, I would consider both are important, both are equally good. But only thing, as a faculty, we are all learning. We should learn to face it in a more effective manner.
Yes. Now, actually, it is my son who is in standard 10th. Now, he is having his online classes. But many times I see when the sums are given for practice, he keeps the mobile aside and he is busy with something else in the mobile. So this is again creating a problem, whereas he is using the mobile for games and all at that particular span of time. So again, it is causing a distraction.
So this is where I said also, we should use a lot of gamification as part of the learning base. There are so many tools that have come in, and it will come in. Once we begin this mode, there will be a lot more things that will come for each subject. So gamification should be part of our way of giving a challenge for the children to learn as well.
Okay, thank
I
you.
intervene here. Actually, Dr. Mridula Ramana is back. So I would again invite Dr. Mridula Ramana to conclude her lecture. And this will be followed by question answer session. If there are any questions for her, Arti, would you please ask her? But before that, she would conclude.
Yes.
Dr. Mridula Ramana, would you please take up?
Because this seems to be, am I muted?
No, ma'am, we can hear you. We can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. So I just want to make a few points as suggested by Madhumita to conclude the thing. One thing I noticed in my study is the public involvement in the dealing with the influenza, which no doubt reduced casualties, particularly in the cities of the presidency. Secondly, I noticed that when there is a public-private partnership, as John Andrew Tanner tried to elicit the cooperation of the public, and the public came forward, there is the possibility of dealing with crises. You can have a cooperation between various agencies. In this case, it was doctors, philanthropists, civic leaders, and so on, who came to the rescue. Now, while this doesn't mean that there was a drastic reduction in fatality, at least there was relief provided, and that is something which is a characteristic of this particular study. The other thing that I noticed, which I pointed out, is that the caste and community organizations, the professional associations, and so on, they were all involved in the relief. And this, in a way, reflects the cosmopolitan social composition of the city of Bombay. The other very interesting feature that has been noticed about this pandemic, influenza pandemic, is that unlike cholera and plague, about which the British left enormous records, there are no records about influenza. In fact, there is no visual records. There is no documentation, no private correspondence, public debate, and so on. And why was this so? Because, as I have mentioned in the conclusion in this slide, the state didn't really care about this mass mortality because there had been decades of pestilence and famine. So it was one more, in the unending saga of famine and pestilence. The other effect was that there was a shortage of food grains, there was a shortage of fodder. In fact, the export of wheat was only stopped in October of 1918. Otherwise, the wheat was going out of the country. So there was a lot of economic distress after this pandemic. And also, as I mentioned, many of the victims were soldiers who returned from the war. In fact, there was even a theory that they brought the influenza from the West. So that was another feature. And there is also this point which I've made in the slide. And for the people, it was just a symptom of, it was an unending struggle for subsistence and survival. And what I would like to finally conclude is that this is the time when the sentiment of the people was gearing towards nationalism. In fact, just after this epidemic, And you know, something strange I would like to mention, the influenza kind of just petered out. Within 2 years, the mortality fell. And then by 1924, it almost disappeared. Now, to come back to 1919 and 1918, this was the time when you had not only the entry of Gandhi, but also the political temper of the time was such that the people were so angry with the British. In fact, the press said that it was not enough to call the epidemic a world scourge and just sit back with folded hands. A war had to be waged. In an editorial, which was entitled Public Health in Young India, as you know, you may be knowing, was associated with Gandhi. It was written in the aftermath of Jallianwala Bagh. It asked whether the government realized the startling psychological effects of this epidemic, when the feeling in the streets of Bombay was that to a government which allowed 60 lakhs of people to die of influenza like rats, actually the casualties for all of India is said to be between 12 and 18 million. I have not touched upon the rest of the country. It's only Bombay city that I spoke about, but this was the point which was made by Young India. The feeling in the streets of Bombay was that to a government which allowed 60 lakhs of people to die of influenza like rats without succor, it would not matter if a few died by shooting. This is a reference to Jallianwala Bagh. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that this thing kept breaking up, but the weather here is very bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Bab, for the very, very informative session and a very thoughtful, thought-provoking session. It was a wonderful session that we had. Although there were so many breaks, but you've concluded the entire lecture so well that it made a lot of, it gave us a lot of inference, as you said in the beginning. We could make a lot of inferences with what is happening now and what happened in the 19th century and even in the 20th century. So I go on to Dr. Aarti Verma to read out the questions that is asked to ma'am.
The question is, why always maximum pandemic diseases come from West? What India and Indian citizen can do to combat such pandemic?
You know, cholera came from, they used to call it Asiatic cholera. Plague came from Hong Kong. It came on the ships. And it is believed that those ships carried silks and various things from China, and they were stored in warehouses in Mandvi, and that is where these rats were found. And then, you know, there were subsequently some deaths in the neighborhood of those warehouses. So, especially with regard to influenza, it came from the West. There's no doubt about that. The first outbreak was in Kansas in the United States, and from there it traveled towards Europe, and from Europe it came to India. Yes, you are right that it came from outside, but the policy of the colonial power was always to blame the Indians, to say that Indians are unsanitary, their habits are bad, that they are unhygienic, and so on and so forth. So that was their view. But our contention was that, no, they came from outside, and we should try to, which is what I've tried to show with regard to influenza and how the Bombay city rose to the challenge. And that was to try and bring about this kind of public-private collaboration in dealing with public health issues. Because it's not only the responsibility of the state, but it's the responsibility of the public also to cope with epidemics. And to do things like what they are prescribing now, wash your hands, maintain social distancing, and so on and so forth. Okay, now I seem to have, I can't see you. Yeah, I can see you now. Yes.
The next question is, ma'am, are we losing our immunity due to modern way of living? That is, use of sanitizer, soap, mask. Because if we see the children at labor colonies, the children there are very immune and strong as compared to our children. So is it we are losing our immunity due to modern way of living?
No, one thing with this COVID, as you may have seen, initially the cases came from outside. It was travelers who brought it, right? But then it is very virulent. It spreads very quickly. And your point that actually they have noticed that children are not so much affected. It has been the elderly, the most, who have been most affected. And there is a theory now that yes, environmental changes have brought about a pandemic like this. There have been so many environmental changes which have resulted in this kind of pandemic. As for your question about how children, they've noticed that children are by and large immune, but though of late, last 2-3 days, CNN has been reporting that they have noticed certain fatalities among children. But that is, some inflammatory complaint. They've still not done full research as to what extent it affects children. So that is as far as your question is concerned. I can't get the screen. What's happened to it?
The next question is, ma'am, can you tell about Epidemic Disease Act 1897? Can you brief upon?
Spoke about it, the plague epidemic.
Okay.
That was what I spoke about. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. The next question is, adaptive immunity serve as a barrier against novel coronavirus? Hello?
I think her connection is lost again.
But this question is not from the historical perspective.
Yeah.
So maybe we keep it for the doctor. He will be there in the next session, maybe tomorrow.
Yes, I think that will be more relevant then.
Yes.
It is a scientific based question.
Yes. So are there any other questions related, which is from a historical perspective?
No.
From a historical perspective, any more questions?
One more question was there. It was related to pandemic. Shall I?
The present pandemic?
Yeah.
Then we'll leave it for the tomorrow. Now you can just note down the questions and we can ask.
Yes, we'll have
an expert coming on public health. Yes. So you'll be able to guide us and provide more insights.
So I think we could invite Dr. Shobha Bharat to conclude this today's session with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Madhumita. At the outset, I would like to thank our Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Shashikala Vanjari, for gracing the inaugural session. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Mridula Ramanna, the eminent speaker who traced the fascinating history of plague of 1896-97 and brought alive the scenario during those times and the parallels that we can draw in the present pandemic. So that was a really fascinating talk, ma'am. Thank you so much. A big thank you to Dr. Judy Andrews for the strategies that would be required for the teachers to follow in the changing scenario. I would like to thank our beloved trustees, management, committee members, Dr. Kundavalli, our director, and the dynamic principal, Dr. Asha Menon, for all the support that they have extended, and this webinar was possible. My sincere appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Athavale and Team Mukta for the extensive support that they have provided with the platform in order to conduct this virtual seminar. Thank you to all the participants for joining in, and do join us back tomorrow because we have two more very eminent people with us, Dr. Vibhuti Patel and Dr. Jeswani. Good evening to each one of you.
We wind up today's session, and I request all the participants to fill in the feedback form, which will be shared in the Telegram. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.